All right, now I'm gonna start, okay? Hello everyone. My name is Nelson, and I'm a rising ninth grader in Basis. I've done Science Olympiad for 1 year, and today I'm gonna be presenting about Reddit Do It with you guys. Uh, as we mentioned before, feel free to ask Jason questions in chat, and he'll do his best to answer them live. In the end, if there are enough questions, I'll pick out some of the most important questions and answer them out loud. Okay, so what is Reddit Do It? It's a hands-on event, but compared to other events, there's not much studying required. So if you think about it like that, it's one of the easiest events in Science Olympiad. Like many other events, it's a two-person team, but in this event, your partner really matters a lot. You and your partner must be able to understand each other and coordinate well. If you and your partner are on bad terms, it might be harder to get a good score on the event because you guys need to communicate often and discuss terms and more. Uh, Description needs to be clear and short in order to be able to finish within the time limit. So now let's talk about the event. In Write It Do It, there are two main rules. Let's first talk about the writer. The writer describes a given drawing or model in words and numbers. They got 25 minutes to write a description, but that can vary between 3D and 2D events, but we'll talk about that later in the next slide. Once the writer is done writing the description and submits, the doer is given the description that the writer wrote, and uh, they're given the materials and or colors to use and draws or makes the picture or model. When you if you're the doer and you finish early, you can either finish it. I mean, you can submit it faster, which counts for the tiebreaker. But I personally recommend you to stop and check your work because if you get more things right, then you get more points than submitting it early and winning the tiebreaker. So once you check your work, you can submit it. All right. So COVID's effects on Reddit Do It. So when the pandemic struck, Reddit Do It was online, right? So this meant Science Olympiad couldn't provide the specific materials to the students during the test. So to solve this, instead of giving a 3D model, competitors were given a 2D drawing to describe and draw. That way, Science Olympiad only had to tell the competitors what colors were needed. 2D Reddit Do It is significantly easier to describe than 3D because there are less dimensions but since it's easier for everyone, I guess the competition is more intense because it's not just easy for one person, it's easier for everyone. So the competition is tighter. Science Olympiad hasn't made an announcement yet for whether it's 3D or 2D next year. So if you're planning to study about the event right now, I would recommend you to wait until the announcement comes out because I guess there's no point if you study both. All right, let's first talk about the writers. The writers need to describe the drawing or model using words and numbers, but no drawings or diagrams are allowed. So this should be pretty straightforward because if you just draw something, then it just ruins the point. But a couple things you need to make sure you're describing are the color, size, uh, name, and the rough precise location, and the rough angles of the item with respect to another. I'll talk about how to describe the precise location in a little bit. For the name, there may be many types of one item. This can be, for example, colors of paper. There can be a indigo piece of paper and a magenta piece of paper in materials, but saying purple wouldn't be enough to distinguish the two. So to avoid confusion, it's best to discuss with your partner about these kind of things. Next, you should avoid being ambiguous. So this means you should describe your drawing clearly and try not to confuse your partner. Finally, the judges must be able to understand what you write. So this means you can't make up abbreviations that nobody knows the meaning to. If you use abbreviations commonly used in texting, such as the letter U for you or BTW for by the way, the judges should be able to tell what you're trying to say and won't deduct any points from you. So on the right, those are some sample scoring rubrics. All right, next we have the doer. Okay, so the doer is hard to prepare for, but there are a couple things that you can be careful of during the test. So first, instead of building or drawing immediately after you read something, you should read the entire line and then draw it, because your partner might have wrote something important in the end of the line, and then uh, and then build or draw as accurately as possible. If your partner wrote something you don't understand, you should think about what the answer key would most likely be and what your partner most likely meant. So you need to build trust in your partner for this, and also study some answer keys and make sure like you can make sure you're able to assume what the judges probably meant. And the scoring for the build or drawing are the proper sizes, colors, positions, and angles, and connections of the items. You guys should be careful of these when building or drawing, because your points at the end of the day are the only thing that matters. All right, now I'll talk about strategies for Write It Do It. So unlike the study events, this event pretty much has no memorization involved. So you can't study for the event. You can't like uh study for the event just like you're studying for a test. So the first strategy I'm going to talk about is to use a coordinate plane that you can use to describe rough positioning. In 2D Write It Do It, the dimensions of the paper are given before you press the start button. So before you press the start button, you can write out the exact coordinates using a ruler before the clock even starts ticking. Even though this is a pretty convenient strategy, make sure you don't draw the coordinate markings within the frame, or the judges will think you drew it out as part of the picture and you'll lose points. The coordinates are obviously not shown on the given picture, so you need to make rough estimates on where each part of the drawing is. This is good for describing size, position, and connections in the picture. Now take a look at the simple drawing that I made. Keep in mind that the real test in Science Olympiad has much more than this. Here's my sample answer. I started off by describing how big each circle is, and to make it simple, I made the doer imagine a square that this circle was inscribed in, and showed the coordinates of the bottom left corners of the squares. To describe the curve or arc, I gave 3 rough points to guide my doer, starting, end, and midpoint. The doer should be able to recognize and draw a roughly identical picture, and I would have gotten a pretty good amount of points for this. All right, moving on. The next strategy is to describe abbreviations and or terminology for shapes or items that are hard to explain. Uh, we talked about this before, but I'll talk a little bit deeper into this. This strategy saves a lot of time because it removes the time spent typing out long words or when describing objects that can't be described in one word. Uh, so since it saves a lot of time, it makes it easier to finish describing the entire image in words within the given time slot. Uh, and then our next, okay, yeah, and then you have to be clear. So avoid being ambiguous and try not to confuse your partner. Uh, to make to make things simple and concise, you should definitely write in bullet points instead of long sentences because one, it's easier for your partner to read what you're trying to say, and two, it saves a lot of time. Uh, and you can describe. Wait. Okay. Okay. Once again, the judges must be able to understand what you write. So, uh, I talked about this before, but you can't make up abbreviations that nobody knows about. Uh, so here's an example of something that's pretty hard to describe because um, the the words are like kind of bubbled, right? So you can to describe how the words below are written, you can you can say you can describe the words by saying that they're bubble words with gap in between equals x centimeters, or you can say anything else that suits you. It's up to you and your partner at the end of the day. Uh, okay, so here are many examples of key item names that may be very important in Reddit Do It. These examples are listed in the rules, uh, so they may be pretty important, and you should definitely go over these. So these include types of toothpicks, types of beads, types of stickers, and more. Like, yeah. All right. Take a look at these. So, type in chat if you know any of the question. I mean, if you know any of the names. I'll give you all 1 minute. Oh yeah, like send the messages to him so that like cause I'm answering questions. So yeah, send it to Nelson. You guys are getting a lot of them correct. Like number 5. All right. I'll move on now. So here's the answer key. Uh, it this doesn't. You don't have to just say this exact same thing that I did, but it's pretty much up to you and your partner at the end of the day. But as you can see, there's many types of pins here. Thumbtacks, push pins, mount pins, T-pins, nails, sewing pins, safety pins, screw eye pins, and brads. If there are multiple types of pins, okay, so this is pretty important, but uh, if, if if there are multiple types of pins in the given model, you're gonna have to use all of these different names. But like, if there's only one type of pin in the model, you can just say pin to make it simple because there's only one type of pin, and your partner should know what that is. Uh, yeah. So you can just say pin to save time. Right. Here's a list of real important terms to agree on. Uh, so this would be like direction, and their abbreviations. And also this is pretty important, but to describe time, I mean direction, uh, you can use a compass reference and assume the body of the writer or doer with respect to the paper or is like you're in south direction, I'm in south, and then uh, you can describe like where the objects are pointing and stuff in write it do it. So yeah. All right, so when describing orientation, you can either use angles or clock directions. So you can either say uh, it's 90 degrees with respect to two things, or 3 o'clock with center Y, and uh, the two pretty much mean the same thing. Just make sure you confuse your partner with like where the vertices of the angles are and where the center of the clock is. Uh, and then next, you need to be as precise as possible. So this means you need to describe things roughly, but also as close to correct as possible. So here's an example on my slide. So to describe the green straw on the sponge, uh, we can say the green straw sticks on uh, the round yellow sponge, and the top bends towards northeast 270 degrees and points southwest. Notice the usage of uh, direction and angles in my example description. So again, your description doesn't have to look exactly like this, but it should be like as precise as this. And I mean, you don't have to be extremely accurate, but you want to be precise enough that it's not like too far off from the answer. You know what I mean? Uh, So the final strategy that I'm gonna present to you guys uh is to write as much as you can. So you can describe uh you can practice describing many practice problems, and each time being faster. But you also have to make sure your work is clear and enough for the doer to understand what you're trying to say. So uh so if you don't know how to describe something, you, you shouldn't just skip it. You should at least have something, because having something is much better than having nothing. Just make sure it doesn't conflict with any of your other description that is correct. So when you're running out of time, writing a lot, just spitting a lot of words in a short amount of time is much better than just having unfinished work where you're just trying to be as clear as possible. So if you should use this as a last resort, but just make sure you at least write something for everything. If you, I've mentioned this before, but if you ever finished early, you can revise your work, because even though time is used as a a tiebreaker, I recommend you revise your work instead of submitting early, because you at the end of the day you earn more points getting correct things than uh, not getting correct things and just being fast. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about preparation tips. Uh, Here are a couple preparations tips. Uh, for terms, you can if you really need them, you can make flashcards in order to remember them. Uh, Unlike other events, there isn't really much of a studying aspect to the event. Uh, so an important part of Reddit Do It is to know your partner well by communicating often. You can do this by calling once in a while, or even talking in person at school. Once you get to know your partner enough, during the test for writers, you can consider what your partner would think about when they read what you wrote. And for doers, you can consider what your partner probably meant when they wrote what they wrote. Uh, for me, my twin brother was my partner, and I had no problem for this, but I figured it would be much harder for normal people to get as much communication with their science Olympiad partner. So, because your science Olympiad partner it won't necessarily be your best friend, so uh, taking communication is uh, pretty important. Just you guys need to have a good relationship and be able to understand each other. And finally, as mentioned from the previous slide, uh, you should practice writing fast and clearly for writers. All right, so this is practice. I'll give you like 6 minutes, but this is a pretty simple drawing consisting of different shapes in different positions. So shapes will be pretty common in Science Olympiad. Right, do it for the 2D portion. Uh, just make sure. This is there's much more in the real test, but since you guys are all new to the event, I decided to give you guys some time. Yeah, I'll give you guys just 2 minutes, just like. All right. So time's up, guys. Okay. Uh, so here's my sample answer. So again, it doesn't have to be the same. Because um, it really depends on you. Okay. So notice how I used rough coordinates and the names of shapes. Uh, I described the. I started off by describing the uh how I mean where the base was of the triangle, and then I I set the tip of the triangle. So I only had to use 3 coordinates there, and I also I I made a I talked about how there was a square since the sides are pretty much equal, and I said where the size of the square and where the left corner where the bottom left corner was, and then I talked about how there was a circle inscribed into it, and yeah, and the rhombus with vertices on the midpoints of each side of the square. So the vertices of the rhombus might not be exactly in the middle of the square, but it's just um a rough estimation. It's pretty it's pretty accurate or precise. Yeah. So now we're gonna watch a video. Can I see it?
Hey, we can't hear.
There's
I
no
can hear.
shit.
Oh wait, I can hear. I can hear.
There's no wait. I don't think there's sound. Can I see it? Oh, wait.
Wait, and play it again.
Oh. So this is what Science Olympiad in person looks like. So the kids are around the students are around the tape, the model, and they basically uh, just write about it. Yeah, that's just how it should look like. All right, so I'm gonna get on Kahoot. Let me find my. Can I see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Jason, you're very fine. All right.
Hey, do you know how to send a link?
I don't. Just use the pin in the share.
Alright. If your SO is dumb, you're so funny.
No trust. SO is not them at all. Also, I see multiple imposters.
Who put Jason N? I'm not in the Kahoot.
I think there's this guy trying to say Andrew L is bad. I disagree.
All right. I'll start in once we hit 95.
Okay, can you guys stop annotating? Like, I don't.
Okay.
I actually
Thanks
don't.
for the person who crossed out my name. I am bad, but like, yeah, let's refrain from annotating. Jason, could you remove annotations?
I'm trying to find how to.
So this one should be pretty easy. I mentioned this in the beginning, but yeah, it's I'm glad a lot of you got it right. I mean, a lot of you got it wrong too, but it's it's fine. So yeah, mass isn't a criteria for judging because it's there's no mass in this. Yeah. Okay, so I'm glad a lot of you guys got this correct because uh you need to be pretty specific for this. So yeah. What should you do if you finish early? So I talked about this a couple times. It it shouldn't be that hard. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'm glad a lot of you guys got this right because this is really important. So yeah, revise your work. Don't forget. I'm not sure why a lot of you guys got this one wrong, but you wouldn't want to write every single detail out to be specific. I mean, it's true you need to be specific, but you don't want to write out every single detail because um it's just too much to write. Which of the following best fits what you should do when you don't understand what your partner wants?
By the way, we ended at 5:25. Just a reminder.
All right, yeah. So, you want to draw or build what you think your partner meant, or what you think the answer key was. But I'm not sure why a lot of people said ask your partner because you can't ask your partner during the the tests. And for green, it says well build what you think you'll get the most points deducted. So I'm not sure why people pick that either. Okay.
Please don't purposely deduct points. That's not a good strategy.
Time is a tiebreaker, so you should submit as soon as you finish writing. It's true or false, by the way. I think I talked about this a couple times. Good job, everyone. Keyword is always, by the way. Okay, so this one is kind of a trick question because if you if there's uh if there's only one type of pin present in the model, then you can just say pin because if there's only one type of pin, then there's no reason to just list out every time what each pin is.
Again, they provide materials for the doer. So like yeah, so the writer already knows what materials are gonna be given to the doer. So yeah, so the doer, yeah, uh-huh.
If you have a question, message Jason in chat. You're the writer and you don't know how to describe something. Which of the following should you do? So you wouldn't really want to skip it because I had a slide on this, but it's better to write something rather than writing nothing, right? If you read the answer choices for this, it would have been pretty easy. Which of the following is a way to prepare for Write It Do It? Okay, this I kind of see why this might have been a little bit tricky for people, but it's okay. So for the people who picked yellow, it says if you read it correctly, it says practice writing fast and unclearly. You want to practice writing fast and clearly, not unclearly. And getting on a call with your partner and chat, like it helps you get to know your partner. And during the exam, if you don't know what they're trying to say, then if you know your partner well, then you might be able to like figure out what they're trying to say. This final question is pretty easy. It's not a building event because that would be like you build something before before the event. Like for example, for storm the castle, you make a trebuchet, and that pretty much is what your event is all about. But here it's called a hands-on event, which I mentioned in the first slide. But a hands-on event is basically where you like you build. I think you kind of build or write something on during the exam, not like before the exam. I guess if that's a good way to explain it. Yeah. Good job, Skittle Chan. All right, we finished right on time. I guess that's it for today. Thank you guys for joining in with us today. I hope you guys learned something from us today. And yeah, thanks for participating. Bye,
For
everybody.
sticking, everyone.
All right, I'm gonna just end the meeting.